Welcome to Season 4 of Design Together, a podcast about how designers work together. This season, we'll be focusing on folks who are just in the first few years of their careers. We'll call it Starting Out. My name is Abby Guido, and I am your host.
Hi, everyone. Today we have with us Nick Olshefski. Nick is our last guest of this season. Welcome to the show, Nick.
Hey, Abby. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Nick is currently a senior experience designer at Think Company, and Nick was a past student of mine who I've stayed in contact with, and in fact, he's been teaching some UX classes for us as well. So I'm really excited to talk to you today, Nick.
Yeah, I'm excited too.
All right. So this season, we're talking about how folks got started, how their first few years of work has been. And so I want to kind of rewind a little bit and think back to when you started to think about college and what you were going to go to school for. Did you come to Tyler for design, or did you come for fine arts? Did you just show up at Temple? What was your path to land in school?
So I always knew I was always an artistic kid. Like, I did photography. I was in all the art classes. I did marching band, all that stuff. I knew that art was something I wanted to go into. And so when I applied to Tyler and got in, I didn't know if I wanted to do photography or if I wanted to do more of like the fine art, kind of like focus. But I realized that one of the things that I really loved doing was using the programs, using Photoshop, working in those design tools. And when someone kind of explained to me what they do in the graphic design program, I was like, that's really like all of those things are really the things that I'm interested in. And so I started, taking some of the studios and seeing if it was something that I would like. And I fell in love with it, after my first Computers for Design class. And I really started seeing myself in that major, applied to it in the program. And once I got in, I just loved it from there on out.
So while you were in school, did you have any internships?
I think it was my senior year, senior year, I started as a junior graphic designer with the Philadelphia Freedom Valley YMCA. I was working for their association office, just doing, any kind of branded posters, social media marketing, any of that stuff. I was working under another designer within the marketing team.
And I know your path lands you in UX, but I'm curious, looking back now, you have some time to reflect. What were the things that you learned in the internship that you feel like made it valuable?
Well, I think one of the biggest things that I learned was how to design within the confines of a brand identity. I know that there are some projects, especially when you're in the graphic design program, where you have the flexibility to create whatever seems best for the project that you're working on, and you have that complete creative freedom to design whatever you see fit. When you're working within marketing team, you're working within a specific brand, you don't really have that much flexibility. And so it definitely kind of tests your skills to make sure that, so that you can see, how can I create a really beautiful design following the design, fundamentals and principles that I've learned over the past few years at in design school. How can I make it still look good and be proud of it, even though I might be withheld to very strict brand guidelines? So that was probably one of the biggest things that I learned.
I think sometimes those limitations are actually really what test our skills, because like you said, then you have to figure out creative solutions that it still stays within the brand guidelines, but you still want to enjoy your work and you want to still feel some ownership. And so it's definitely a tricky balance.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So you had that internship. You're in school, you're starting to think about career. What type of support did you receive while you were in school to kind of figure out what you wanted to do and how to look for a job?
Thinking back to, my path to design, my path to UX and kind of where I'm at today, I think that there might be people or designers, young designers that are listening to this that might be, in their sophomore, junior year of design school that might be thinking, I obviously worked hard enough and I obviously have a strong enough portfolio that got me into the program or got me here, but might find themselves struggling with specific areas of design that they might see their peers doing really well at. They might see their peers, exceeding and creating these amazing brand identities and, putting together these incredible posters and maybe find themselves feeling a little kind of rethinking their path. And that was kind of where I was. I know that I struggled a little bit especially when it came to branding projects.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that was hard for me to realize is that, no one expects you to go to design school and be perfect at everything. There's going to be some things that just come naturally to certain people, and there's going to be things that other people struggle with. And for me, my strengths were more in, using in motion design, and I soon came to find out that UX came pretty naturally to me. The visual design for screens and working with design systems and building things out, and at that point it was XD, and for me, building out screens and prototypes and being able to find my strengths from visual design and apply that to what I soon came to find was a UX process, which goes into the story of how I actually didn't get into UX until my final semester, which was when I was doing thesis with you, and you were my thesis professor. And I remember pitching my thesis idea to you, and you said that this actually sounds like it would be a perfect UX UI project. And I was like, all right, that's cool. What is UX UI?
I get to remind everyone, because you remind me and everyone will learn. How did you pitch that project? What was the first iteration of it?
I remember you saying to pick on your thesis to pick something that you're really passionate about. My pitch for my thesis project was it was an app for your phone. It was a game that pairs with an Apple Watch.
Okay. So you knew right away you were doing that, because everyone knows Nick was a swimmer his whole life. So playing into that interest. And so you knew it was going to be an app, but you didn't really know anything about the UX process at the moment.
Yeah. So I had this kind of this grandiose idea of what I wanted this thing to be. But at that point, all I knew was like, I just have to design a few screens and maybe put it on a watch and it will be good to go. And I think that was the point where you said, this concept you're building up, like this should be really great for you to take it, using a UX process. And, at that point I was a little confused, and you said, well, do some research, figure out what UX UI is and come back to me and see if it's worth it, if it's something you'd be, if it'd be worth, pursuing that for your project. And so when I went and looked at everything that had to do with UX UI, that project, that thesis project, was a perfect example or a perfect opportunity for how I could apply UX to that. Because with this concept, being like the ideal end user, being the person that I was designing this app for, basically the little version of me, the 10-year-old me. So I already had kind of that personal stake or that kind of experience that I could design around, but I also knew plenty of people that were, swimmers their whole lives. I knew people that grew up going to the pool, people who had kids that were going to the pool. So I had already in my network, I had like a ton of users that I could conduct research on and ask questions and build off of. And so, yeah, it like deciding to go that approach not only helped me make my thesis project one of the most exciting things I've ever worked on, but it also kind of opened up this new world of design that I had no idea about before.
Yeah, and I have to say, from the teaching side of this, it's one of those moments that I don't think that will ever escape me, is getting to see, you kind of find this passion and go from, always a great student and very active in the department, active in class, but maybe I could see that hesitation of like, frustration of why can't I get where other folks are getting with certain visual sides of the branding. Even with the branding with this project, I remember those conversations.
Yeah.
And then to watch you actually like find this passion and fall in love with it was really amazing. I mean, it just kind of, you were already very, nice and friendly and outgoing, but it really lit you up. Like you could really tell every time you presented every week just how excited you were. And if I recall too, it also forced you to go back to your other projects and start to rethink what were you going to put in a portfolio so that you could pursue this career. So will you talk a little bit about that? Because I think that sounds scary to some folks, like last semester in school, figuring out, oh, this is what I want to do. So how did you think about the portfolio then?
From the moment I got into the department, there were 3 semesters of just like this unnerving feeling of what I'm actually going to do. And so when I finally got to that last semester and I started, approaching everything from a UX, from a UX perspective, and I realized how much I loved it, it kind of allowed me to see see the opportunities that I had, and seeing that, like kind of taking that newfound appreciation for UX, and now that I have this newfound strength that I didn't have before, it allowed me to kind of look at my other projects and decide what are the things that I can maybe tweak a little bit, build off of, and maybe I can go back and I can maybe do a little bit of research or go back to maybe the wireframing stage. If I hadn't sketched the ideas out or done any wireframe, which process is really important. And that's one thing that I want everyone to remember, that when you're a design student, it is sometimes very easy to just jump into Illustrator, jump into Photoshop and start working on something. But process is really important. And that was one of the things that I tried to remind myself. I'm building out a UX UI portfolio. And a lot of times it's not always just about the end design. It's a lot of the times it's about what's the process that got you to that final project. And so that was kind of the approach that I did. Some of the projects, obviously not all of my projects made it into my final portfolio, but the projects where I had enough background and enough time that I could go in and maybe rethink some new ideas, build off some sketches. And I included that whole process in my portfolio. I think it allows for my work to be shown and the process of where I got to how I got to that. I think people love to see that. Seeing the final result is great. But I know that a lot of hiring managers, a lot of just designers in general, love to see the process of how you got to that end result.
Sure, in some ways, it validates your role in the project, right? But it also shows how you're going to approach problems. Mm-hmm. So let's go. So you work on the portfolio, you get it where it needs to be. Let's talk a little bit about the job search process. How did that go for you?
Yeah, that was the hardest thing, and I think everyone will agree with me when they say that once you graduate and you have this weight lifted off your shoulders of now I'm free and now I'm an actual adult in the real world. It is hard. It is terrifying, and I would say this is for everyone, for your mental health. Enjoy some time to just relax and decompress after a really stressful, long few months of your final semester. So I'll just, fit that in there. I made sure to take that time for myself. But yeah, when it came to the job search itself, I mean, I had already gone to a few networking events and met a bunch of people. The feedback event at AIGA, that was one thing that I went to where I actually interviewed with Josh Kubat, who was a designer at Think Company at the time. And I had an opportunity to present my portfolio then. And I'd already made a connection there, which I think, you had already had a few connections at Think to begin with. I kind of made sure to reach out to the connections that I had made, in that time frame between graduating and over the summer, seeing what kind of, roles were available, what kind of, openings there were. So there were a few places that I applied. And one of the things that was really kind of tough was seeing that there were a lot of these openings required it required 2 to 3 years of professional experience in the industry. And when you're just graduating, you see that and you're like, well, I'm not even going to apply for this.
I just told my students this. I said, apply anyway.
Yep. And that's the thing, is that I actually think when I was applying to places, the Think Company opening the application, actually, I saw it and I just kind of skipped over it. I was like, I'm not even going to apply. Think Company, they're never going to hire me. And I remember you actually sent it to me, and I actually looked back at my text. You says 2 years, but ignore that. And I was like, I said, okay, sure. If Abby says to apply for the position, I absolutely will. And I applied at a few other places too. There were a few places that I heard back, that they were no longer, looking for openings, and a few places I didn't hear back from, which always stinks. Yeah, when I got the first, email that I was, getting, going to be called in for an interview it was amazing. And I did that, even just that first email that I was to get to an interview with the hiring manager. It was the first step of a long journey that I did not know was coming. So close to graduation, you know what I mean?
So let's talk a little about that. So what was the hiring process like when you were hired?
There was an initial hiring manager call, or I think it was actually an initial call with HR. I think it was just to go over some standard logistics, see if I was a good fit. There was another call that I had with a hiring manager. I think that one was more more skills based, kind of just get an understanding of who I am, the type of designer that I am, if I would be a good fit. I think more if it'd be more fit culturally, and just to kind of see what I have to offer. I think from then I was told if I seemed like a good fit that they would reach out with details for what Think Company called was a think exercise, which that was at that point the third round of interviews. I was provided a prompt that was catered around my skill set. So Think has concentrations or offerings that we have. So they might have some exercises for UX designers, for UI designers, or researchers, all of those things. So they sent me a prompt that kind of catered to visual designers, UX UI designers, and I remembered I remember hearing some of the warnings sometimes when it comes to doing a design prompt, and how sometimes those can be there is a little bit of a wishy-washy kind of perspective on those. But I would say that when I saw that I was being offered to do this exercise and be given this design prompt, I was actually really excited, because it provided another opportunity for me to show how I solve this problem, and kind of show my skills that's outside of this portfolio that I've been working on for like the last 7 months. And it was an opportunity for me to see how they work, what they're looking for. It gave me opportunity to ask them all kinds of questions. That was kind of, I think that's kind of what they are looking for as well, is, as we were talking about the process, it's not just here's a prompt, go and design it. We want you to be asking us, what are the questions that you have about the prompt? What are the additional details that you might need to do this as effectively and as successfully as you possibly can? Which was I loved it. I thought it was a really fun challenge doing that. Being given a prompt, getting to solve the problems, and then getting to design it I'll never forget. It was definitely terrifying having to go in and present to a panel of people this project after really only having a few chances to present my work. That's one of the things that I would recommend for anyone, is to take as many opportunities as you can to present your work, to talk about your work, to interview, to get comfortable with public speaking. That presentation, that think exercise that I did, probably would have gone a little differently, considering how nervous I was, if I hadn't had the opportunities to present my work at the different events that I went to in our portfolio event. Having the experience that I did with public speaking kind of took down the pressure for that presentation, and helped me feel a lot more prepared than I would have otherwise.
So you give the presentation, everyone claps, you have a conversation. What happens next?
Yeah, we just kind of wrapped up. We had some additional kind of questions, and once I wrapped up the presentation, they told me that they would stay in touch and let me know what what the outcome would be. And I'll never forget when I got that email that they were going to offer me the position. And I think I was like walking in the mall or something like that. And when I saw the email come through, and I didn't know whether to scream, lay down. It was definitely surreal seeing that, because at that point I had worked so hard, through all of those months to get to that point. And so once I got that email and got some more information on what the role was going to be, I think from then on out, it was just, I think there were probably 2 to 3 weeks before my first start date, so they could get all the logistics figured out. And then, I started in July of 2019.
You don't have to give the numbers, but did you negotiate at all with this job offer?
This is a tough topic, especially because there wasn't as much information regarding salaries in the industry, especially for junior designers, which is also really hard to figure out what to negotiate against, because you are a junior designer with 0 years of experience who's applying for basically a mid-level position. So, it's kind of like, what is the number that I'm supposed to kind of throw out there? I think initially I threw out a range, and we kind of narrowed down to a number from there. I will say I don't know if I had negotiated from there. There are times where I wish that I had, which I think anyone can say, that there's a lot of times that they had wished they negotiated more. I wish that I had done even just a little bit more research, just to kind of see what is a common salary in that role. And if there's a number that you see, if you see that number a lot, do not hesitate to, pick that number and then pick a range around that. Yeah. I will say that I definitely think that I shortballed myself a little bit, just because I kind of thought about my skills and my experience. And I think that I might have done that differently if I knew what I knew now.
I have a question for you. Did you ask your parents?
Oh, well, yes, I did. And my parents...
I think sometimes what happens, I don't know if this happened with you, but depending on what industries your parents come from, sometimes parents are a little sticker shocked at how much their children might be able to make.
Mm-hmm.
And might not give the best advice, because to them, it's hard to think about what someone's starting out now when they think about what they started out as.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think I did ask my parents, and I believe that they were kind of like, "Whoa!" Well,
that's what I figured.
Right. Well, within tech, when you within the tech industry, as you said, the industries, you're going to have different salary ranges, based off of the different industries, and I think that was probably why I kind of shortchanged myself, was because I saw what the range was for tech in Philadelphia, and I remember thinking, "There's no way that I as a junior designer who just graduated literally 2 months ago, is going to be making that much."
Sure.
And I think once I got into the industry, and and more often nowadays, it is more common to talk about your salary, and is becoming less of a taboo thing. And it's actually more of something that we would like people to talk about, to make sure that there is equality in pay, and that people are, comparing to what other people are making, so that it is fair. And so even just in the last few years of being in my professional role, have I seen that change. And so I will say that I think for some of the younger designers, they might see a little bit more transparency in the salary ranges that are available now, compared to even just in the last 4 years.
Sure. I mean, even some cities now, New York, they have to publish what the range are for jobs. So there's definitely more than information. All right. So you've been there for 4 years. Can you and you're the only person this season, I'm pretty sure, who actually has stayed at their first job and is still there now. So will you talk a little bit about kind of what promotions you've gotten, how your role has changed over the 4 years you've been there?
When I started at Think, the types of projects that I was put on were more studio-based projects. So Think is a consultancy. So we work with a variety of different clients. It's not just like kind of one big client. We might have a handful of different projects that you might be on. When you're studio-based, you can be on 2 projects or 3 projects at a time, working with different clients. I am so grateful that I was put on that kind of model of being on projects, because from the minute that I started, I was working with 3 different design teams full of people from different backgrounds with different strengths and within different roles. Now, the typical, structure of the team would usually have a design lead. We would have a tech lead. There might be a senior experienced designer, or a senior UX designer. And then there might be like a junior or mid-level designer that would be on the team. When I first started, I was on 3 different projects that were all like that. And the best thing about that for me was that I was able to learn something from every single one of those projects. And it was like I was learning from all of those different concentrations that I was like wanting to learn on. So the one project I was assisting in research efforts, and the other one I was working on more branding and design system work, and then the other one I was working alongside developers and seeing, kind of doing some design work, support for the development team. And so the breadth of experience that I got, honestly, in just my first few months was incredible. I mean, I even felt myself growing as a designer just within the first 6 months. And Think does we do like 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 6 month feedback, kind of check-ins to see how you're doing. And it's funny, like even just reading how my progress was from my 3rd week check-in all the way to the 6-month check-in. It was so amazing seeing and even feeling my growth, and how comfortable I was between that first check-in and that other check-in, because I got in there, I was given all these opportunities, and I tried to soak up as much knowledge as I possibly could. You might not find it everywhere, but the thing that I found was that we had our entire network of designers. There wasn't a single person that I felt like I couldn't go to with a question about things. Everybody, all the way up to like our senior vice president of design, I could sit down and have a candid conversation about something that I might have been working on, and they would be there to provide honest, candid feedback and teach me and kind of like help me get to where I was looking and where I was going. And that to me helped just like it helped just kickstart my growth from them, because I realized that these are the people I can go to if I have a question. And I knew that it was foster this environment of growth, and it allowed me to kind of just like kind of shoot from the stars, shoot for the stars from there.
So what was your first title when you first got hired?
I was just an experienced designer, which would be mid-level at that point.
And then is the next jump your current position, senior?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So after a few years, I think it was, about 3.5 years of being on different projects, I moved from studio work to being on a dedicated project where I was full-time 40 hours on working on a single client. As I said, all of those experiences and growth opportunities taught me not only the hard skills that I needed to kind of like work on a little bit, but the soft skills, as I was saying, the public speaking, knowing how to deal with clients, the consulting part of working for a consultancy, all of those things that I had started to refine. And that growth is kind of what got me to where I am today. And now I recently, actually earlier this year, was promoted to senior experience designer. And
awesome. Just for people out there who are new to the professional world. So you got a title change, but I'm assuming that in the past, before the title change, 3.5 years, you were still getting some type of pay increases for your annual reviews.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's important for folks to know that raises don't only come with a title change. And so they do yearly reviews now once you get past the first year. Is that how it works?
Yeah. Yep. So they've actually changed it a little bit over time. So we used to just do the annual performance reviews. And then I think within the last 2 years, they implemented a mid-year evaluation, mid-year performance review, just to, kind of check in with your team, see how you're doing. Because it is a lot can happen in a year moving between different projects, and things may go really well, things may go really bad. And so we kind of found that it was good to have a mid-year check-in just to see what are the things that are you meeting your goals? Do we have to refine our goals a little bit? And when I was getting closer to my promotion, I was finding that I was not only I had been meeting those goals, and then was like already starting to craft new goals at that point. And I think that was the point where we kind of realized, okay, I think it's time to take that next step, because you've met all of your goals at this point. So let's kind of see what else is out there and start giving you some new opportunities.
So as I mentioned before, Nick has been teaching, and the educator in him has already answered my last question a few times ago. I'm going to give him an opportunity for one last piece of advice to folks that are just heading out into the industry.
I would say to just take every opportunity that you can to learn. Always be open to criticism and feedback, and knowing how to apply that feedback to your work. People love to see that you are just open to growth and always wanting to be a better version of yourself. And design, senior designers, managers, any designer just loves to see a young person that has that motivation and determination to be better and to grow their work. And so I would say that's my biggest bit of advice. Find that thing that you're really strong with, and kind of continue to move forward with that. But yeah, always be growing and always be learning.
Thank you so much, Nick, for being here today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you all so much for listening. We'd love to hear your feedback. Feel free to send us a message or leave us a review. To learn more about the show, check out our website at designtogetherpod.com. Special thanks to Rob Weston at Great Magnet Recording Concerns for providing our post-production.